Hello everyone! How you all doing? So I've got another great guest for you now from, as we say here, all the way over the pond in New York City. Please take a listen to my interview with Broadway musical theatre performer Meghan Picerno.
The first question is, where does your passion for musical theatre and performing come from?
Okay, where my passion? It's interesting. I honestly don't know. As in, like, it's always just kind of been like a part of my life. But indirectly, like when I was little, there would always be classical music playing in my household, like symphonies, etc. And I played classical piano when I was growing up. And I didn't, again, it never did it occur to me like music is going to be what I do as a living. But it was just
Yeah.
always part of my life. And then in high school, I was cast as the lead in Music Man as Marion Scandalo. I was like, oh, I really love singing. Who knew? And so that's like kind of where that began. And then, of course, there's so much more to talk about, like where my career ended up, of course. But yeah, like it was just always swimming around, right? But never like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not from like a musical family. Like it's like science, math based here. You know what I mean? Like, and my mom's a teacher.
Oh,
And so, yeah, like it never was really on my radar to be like professional performer and musician. That is what I'm doing. I honestly didn't even know until like I was in college, to be very honest with you. And then I was like, oh, I think I'd like to do this as a profession.
yeah. Do you know what? So many people say this to me. Like I've spoken to so many people whose families are in the profession, and they say, "Oh, it was so easy because mum sings or dad sings or my grandparents." And I mean, I'm exactly the same. It just came from nowhere, really. I love doing it. It became a hobby first, and then, it was like people go, "Do you know what? You can get paid for doing what you like to do." And you're like, "What?
Well,
Yes,
it was
please."
really funny though. This is like a crazy weird story, but I just found out like a year ago that music is like in my blood. In fact, how awesome is this? My grandma and grandpa, who I never met, they passed before. My grandma died when I was very young, and my grandpa died before I was born. But they originally met because they were in a jazz trio that was super famous in Chicago. My grandma played the drums and my grandpa
What?
played the bass. And like, yeah, they had like records out, jazz and everything. I had no clue because they gave it up when they decided to have kids. So like, I just found this out a year ago, and I was like,
That
so I
is
guess
so cool.
it's in my blood. I just, yeah, I don't come from a family that's like, we were on Broadway, this is what you should do. Honestly, for
Yeah.
me, it was like, if I wanted to be a doctor, I'd be good to go. But this, it was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. So
yeah.
when you kind of like realized that this is what you wanted to do, did you train to do it, or how did you prepare to go into a career in the arts?
Okay, so yes and no. Again, like compared to, although I don't like comparing myself, but we all do it. Compared to others, like I said, I wasn't born out of the womb knowing I wanted to do this. I mean, I went to like college prep school, straight A student, math, science, doctor. Like I was like, that side of my brain's a little dusty, but like it's there. But like then something like moved me, and then like a speaker came from Ravinia Festival, which is a big music festival in Chicago, which is where I grew up, and it was like follow your dreams, and I was like, oh my gosh, like singing is my dream. I auditioned into the School of Music, I got in, and then and then in true Meghan Picerno fashion, I was like, well, if I am going to sing, I should study where Mozart lived. Like that literally was what I thought. And so I went to Vienna and I studied abroad at the International Europäische für Studenten and the Wiener Conservatorium. And that's where, like, obviously, like, I know, it's as crazy as it seems, but that's like how I operate. It's like when it bites, and it's like, we're going to do this. And
Yeah.
that obviously was the real beginning of changing my life. I mean, and to back up slightly further, I mean, my junior year of high school, my French class went to see a French opera at the Chicago Lyric Opera, Romeo and Juliet by Gounod. And like, that's another pivotal moment. Like I remember that was my first opera. I was like, what, 16, 17? And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And like the rest of my class was like, but I was like, guys, it's like amazing. Like, so like it really, and again, like out of the blue, like I didn't know anything about anything with that. And so that's when I started, just for fun, taking like classical voice lessons, which then grew into me taking on a major in college and then graduating college and being like, what did I just do? And then my parents moved to New Jersey in the meantime. And then I became acquainted with New York City. I remember another pivotal moment. I remember like getting off the train from Penn Station, and it was literally like a movie. I was like, just like the like need to go to Vienna. My thought was, yes, I will go to school here for grad school. I will live here. And yes, I will perform here. Like literally that was like the first thing that like came to mind as I got up. It was the craziest thing. And so what happened then? Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I also boldness, guys, to any of your audience that's young and is like, how do we do this? First of all, there's no one way, but boldness I think is key. So I have no shame. So I looked up again, because I didn't have like family members or anything that knew the business. I literally was kind of a pioneer, right? I had no idea what I was doing. And so I remember I was fresh. Like I barely knew anything about opera, quite frankly, or anything. And so I went online to look at Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, and the Metropolitan Opera at their list of coaches and teachers. And I literally was just like, hello, my name is Meghan Picerno. I am from Illinois, and I would like to have a lesson with you. Thank you. Goodbye. And here's the crazy thing. Everyone said yes. I mean, so another good little rule is like the worst that can happen is no. So my first lesson in New York City was in the basement of the Met with one of the most famous coaches who has since passed, Nico Castell. He wrote all those amazing IPA books. And that was my first lesson. Yeah, that was my first lesson in New York City, was with Nico Castell in the Metropolitan Opera. And then so
funny.
I know, it's insane. And then my second coaching was with one of the most famous German diction coaches, Mariana Barrett, who's still an incredible force in my life. And I went to Manhattan School of Music, and that was the same thing as New York City. Like I got into the school, I walked in for my lesson, and I was like, yes, I will be auditioning here, and this is where I'm going to go. I mean, yes, of course, I auditioned at Yale and Juilliard, but I got sick with Juilliard, and they wouldn't let me reschedule. It wasn't meant to be, but like I knew I wanted to go to Manhattan School of Music, so yeah, I auditioned, I got in, and then funny thing, like I graduated from grad school and was like, okay, what's happening with life? Like, because like another great thing to kind of like touch base on to younger professionals and people who aspire to is like, I sort of felt forced that I needed to go to grad school for opera. And like, yeah, sort of like, okay, going to a conservatory, a top conservatory, you might make connections, you might. But like looking back on it, all the people that are like a force in my life right now are not from there. So like it's not necessary. Don't tell anyone that. But like for some maybe it is. But and like I guess that was my past, hundreds of thousands of dollars later and student loans up the wazoo. But like, you know, there is no one path. My entire career and life is just gut feelings, and when it strikes, just dive in. Go for it. You know, like just you will swim. I mean, it may not be pretty, but like you will. You won't sink. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you're going to get stronger each time that you decide to just be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yes, of course I would love to do that. Perfect. Yes.
Do you know what? I say this to my students all the time. I say to them, say yes, and then figure out how you're going to do it later.
Yeah, isn't that Sir Richard Branson? Doesn't he say that? Like, screw it, let's do it, or something like that?
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to. I mean, I have definitely lived the last 10 years of my life like that. Definitely. Because I did exactly the same thing. You know, I was like, right, I need to go to a drama school because this is what, you know, I have to do that. And this is what, and I went, and it was great and lovely job and everything else. But like, yeah, like you say, the past at least 5 years, I've made what I've made of myself purely from my own kind of like gut instinct and myself, like knocking on doors, nagging. Like I am exactly the same. Like I'll just write all of these people, and like you say, you know, the worst that can happen, in my opinion, is they not got back to you. Like because even if they say no, it kind of means at least they've noticed you.
Yeah.
You know. Like, at least they've acknowledged the fact that you've sent them an email, they've read it, you know. And a no is kind of like a yes, maybe later on down the track. So, you know, I'm terrible. Megan, and I have had that. Like, I've had a no for now, and then I'm like, a couple of years later, hey, remember me?
You know what? I mean, I think that's something, you know, so many of us are worried about rejection, which is part of our business. Like, and honestly, it still stings, like, every time, you know, if you really are like, I want that, and you don't get it. Of course, it doesn't matter, like, what kind of professional you are or, like, how far along you are. It stings. But, like, you just kind of get used to it. And, yeah, I mean, just put yourself out there. I think that's, like, one part of the puzzle is you have to be bold enough to just try. I mean, and know that it may not work out how you want, but also, I don't know how about you feel, but like for me, I've also noticed that sometimes things that I'm like, oh, I need to get this, don't happen. And then all of a sudden, like, that door closes, but then a window opens, and I was like, oh, it's because I was supposed to fly through that window instead. Like, it's crazy.
Definitely. Yeah, and you know what? Half the time, the things for me anyway that I've really desperately wanted haven't worked out as well as some of the things that I've gone, yeah, like maybe I don't really know anything about that. Like, I'll give it a go, I'll give it a try. And I've kind of like not been that bothered about. They've been like the most exhilarating things. They've been the things that have changed your mindset or your journey or your path and impacted on you so much more than that thing that you thought you desperately wanted to do.
Oh, totally. I mean, like, and sometimes there's like a combo, of course, you know, but I definitely agree that, like, if you have an idea, like a skeletal structure, and you work so hard and you put all your efforts towards whatever that general umbrella is, with honestly, obviously, like, specifics, you can't do everything, right? You want to specialize, but like at the same time, like, when that occurs, call it universe, God, whatever you want to call it, will send you what you desire and like are looking for, even if it comes in a shape that you weren't expecting. So as long as you're open-minded enough to be like, oh, yes,
that's good.
You know, that's great. That's amazing. Like, I mean, truly, like, to be honest with you, if you would have told me 3 years ago when I was like full on opera, like, hey, you'll be on Broadway dancing in pointe shoes at the Majestic, I would have been like, what?
No.
I mean, okay. But at the same time, here I am living a dream that I had a broad idea of, but like, this is definitely one of my dreams. And I didn't even fully know it was until I started living it. And it was in its realization that I'm like, I am literally living my dream. And so, I mean, I think that's what's so amazing. So yeah, gut feeling, you know, be bold, put yourself out there, get uncomfortable. I mean, again, like, I have a rule with myself. Well, that's kind of like doesn't really apply too much right now that I'm in, like, you know, lockdown hibernation. But like, I try to do one thing a day that scares me. And it could be minuscule. Like, for instance, if I have a gut feeling to be like, hey, I love your hat, where's that from? Even though I might be kind of like, I'm not really shy, but like occasionally I'll be like, oh man, I had that thought. I do it then. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it makes you like a little uncomfortable, I try to do that because, you know, I mean, I had a teacher in undergrad, Dr. Sam Saffris from Texas, and he would be like, you know, gal, he's like, you just got to keep going. And he's like, there are no mistakes. There's just learning experiences. He's like, just keep pedaling the bicycle. And I was like, oh my God, that's so great. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I am literally living that proof, right? And then, like, if you were to also ask me, like, hey, what's your 5-year plan? My 5-year plan isn't like a what, right? It's not like, it's not necessarily like materialistic or a thing based. It's more of a who. So like, who do I want to become? And then under that, all the what's will fall into place because I know what kind of person I want to become as a singer, as a person, etc. You know what I mean? It's much more general, but also much more deep. It's so much more deep-seated. So
yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think you're so right. Like things do fall into place. And I think sometimes we worry so much about, firstly, like what people think of yourself. You know, that's like such a, it's in human nature, isn't it? We can all go, oh, I don't care. But, you know, it's difficult, right? And also, yeah, like going, oh God, you know, I'm this age, and I actually saw myself at this age being able to do X, Y, and Z, and I haven't achieved any of those things. But sometimes I say to the children all the time, it's not about what you haven't achieved, if it's about what you have achieved.
yes,
And what you have achieved, and all of the little things that have happened along the way, is so precious and so brilliant. Don't look at what you haven't done, because sometimes those things that you thought that you really wanted to achieve mean nothing, and actually what you've done is incredible and opens so many more doors and so many more thoughts for yourself and those of you around you. Like, you're winning. You know, if you're happy with what you're doing, I always say it doesn't matter what anyone else wants you to do, and it doesn't matter what you thought you'd be doing. If you're happy with what you're doing now, tick.
yes, I 1 trillion%. And also, you never know, like, what experiences, even if they seem to you at the time, like, how could me being a personal assistant or like serving tables or this and that, you are learning something from everything you do, even if it's something you have to do in order to get to what you want to do, right? I mean, you never know. And also, yeah, like failures, I hope you get comfortable failing, because that is part of success. And like, if you're too afraid to fail, you'll never get success. So like, just kind of embrace it, like fall on your face. It still hurts. It still sucks. But like at the same time, like, I mean, what's that saying? It's the difference between a master and an amateur is that the master has tried and failed more times than the amateur has even tried. So true. And just get comfortable with it. And indeed, like everything you do, as long as you are doing it with greatness, it's going to help you somehow. And indeed, like those missed opportunities, well, maybe that missing it is the very catalyst that propels you into doing the thing that it's all incarnate. It's all this. It's all that. You can't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20, right? First of all, we're not in the same book. Second of all, we're in different areas and we're in different parts of our story. So like, okay, so I'm XYZ age. Indeed, society deems that as a woman, I should have a child. I should be, well, guess what? I'm making an empire for myself. So maybe that chapter, if I want it, comes later. And like, I have to work on that. But I think it's extremely important. Like, blinders on, guys. Like, our stories they're different. Like, they're not the same. So like, honestly, at 20, I probably could not have handled being on Broadway, like emotionally. Honestly, like my time came when it was supposed to, and it's still continuing. Like, I don't know exactly what my journey is. I'm just at the beginning. I'm not at the end. So, and mine is completely different than anyone else's. So, I mean, but you have to work on it. Like, it takes work.
Talk us through your journey career-wise so far.
Okay. Also, you'll have to rein me in. Well, let's start more, I'm sure, like with the crossing over, because like that has been like a very huge career expansion, we'll call it. And so 3 years ago, I was singing in Spain, opera, and I was gone for a while. And I came back and I had this, I do this a lot to myself too, which I am learning. I love to bite off so much to chew. And so literally I had agreed to perform on this like recital concert on like the Upper East Side right off the plane. I mean, so many things could have gone wrong, right? Like, so I literally was coming from Spain, changing into my beautiful gown in the Uber, warming up, completely jet lagged. And I was like, oh my God, what have you done? You've done it again. What are you doing? But here we are. And I almost canceled. And so like I got there and I was just like, oh, hello. And so like I sang some, Italian opera and this and that. And then I sang Glitter and Be Gay from Candide. And so the pianist, who was one of my friends, Michael, was like, Meghan, for the past month that you've been gone in Spain, the new New York City Opera has been looking for a Cunegonda, the lead in Candide, and they can't find anyone. Like, they've been looking, like they've been like just crazy style searching, and they have an open call, which, by the way, open calls don't happen in opera very much, if ever. And they're like, and it's a revival, like it's going to be huge, like they just can't find anyone. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh my God, Michael, I just fired my agent in France. I have no agent. What do I do? And so here's another little tip. So I have a group of people, right? Like I have a team, and it grows, but it's very, I'm very particular. But also, like, the universe sends you those people. And so luckily, my team is incredible. A lot of women are in there, like my fairy godmothers, I call them. And so they're from the Metropolitan Opera. Anyway, so they called the head of New York City Opera, Michael Capasso, adore, and they were like, Michael, you got to hear this girl. Like, she's fresh out of school, but, like, she's amazing, and, like, you just got to hear her. And so Michael was like, I'll hear her on a lunch break. So I went in the next week, and I didn't think anything of it. And, like, on the lunch break, I, like, was my quirky whatever self, and, like, I did me, right? And I sang Glitter and Be Gay, and I didn't think anything of it. And then I got a call back, and I was like, oh, all right. And so then I went back, and I remember a couple things. One, I recognized a lot of the women that were up for the role. First of all, I was the only brunette there, and the tiniest. I was like, well, clearly they're trying to cast something, and I am not it. But, like, whatever. And, like, a lot of them were, like, established, and I was like, okay, all right, fine. So I went in, and I was like, and for any of you know New York, it was at the Domena Center, and it was huge. And so, like, I walked in, and I was like, okay, this is not a normal opera audition, because there were, like, 15 people in my audition. And I was like, what? And so, like, again, not thinking much of it, I was like, okay, fine. So I went in, and, like, I'm doing my thing, and, again, opera auditions and music theater auditions are very different animals. Like, usually for opera, you're kind of, like, closer to the piano and this and that. So, like, I like, assume soprano cove by the piano. And I'm starting to sing, and then all of a sudden, because this room is huge. It's where orchestras practice, right? And so all of a sudden, like, way down there where all of them are, I hear, honey, can you please come up? Can you please come up? And I'm like, okay, like, as I'm singing, and I'm like, okay. And then, like, as I'm singing, this older gentleman, and again, thank goodness I didn't know who was in the room. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. Is like, well, she's fantastic. She's great. And I was like, well, this is lovely that, like, a cheerleading thing is happening here while I'm singing. It's very distracting, but yay, I guess. And so I finished singing, and, like, literally by the time they had me come up, I could have touched them. Like, I was right there, which was so weird to me. I was like, oh my God, we're really close, guys. Hey, we'd like to offer you the role. And I was like, okay, amazing. And so then fast forward, and so, by the way, that man was Hal Prince, who is the original producer and director of Phantom and everything. And exactly. And, like, and also Pat Birch is one of my fairy godmothers. She was one that was like, honey, can you push your hair back out of your face? And I was like, oh, okay. And so anyway, so I got the role, and it changed my life, because in the midst of that, so because Hal was directing this revival, he brought his Broadway people, and then there were ballet people, and then there were opera people. And it was literally like Harry Potter, like all these, like, different houses came together. And it was one of those magical casts. Like, they don't happen frequently in life, but when they do, it sticks with you forever. Like, we still have a text group that's called, like, the Candied Fams, that we still text 3 years later. And, like, so that's, like, was my first experience, like, working with, like, actual Broadway professionals, and not just anyone. We're talking, like, Tony nominated, Emmy nominated. Yeah. And I'm just like, I was learning so much super quickly. So I'm learning. And in the midst of that, Hal and Pat were like, kiddo, would you ever do Broadway? And I was like, I mean, I wasn't really planning on it, but, like, sure. Like, I mean, yeah, why not? Like, I mean, how amazing. So here's a crazy thing too. I was supposed to go after Candide back to France. That was my plan, and sing there. And then I was like, and sing opera. And I was like, okay, you know what? This, like, crazy, amazing opportunity just steamrolled through my life. I have to see what this is. So then Hal was like, honey, have you seen Phantom? And I was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I have not. and And so he's like, you should probably see that. And I was like, yeah, probably. And so, like, I mean, like, I saw the movie, of course. And of course I know Phantom. Like, everybody knows Phantom just about. So he got me tickets to his box. I sat in his box. I saw Ali Ewald, who now is a dear friend. And I was like, okay, so Phantom is awesome. And what have I been missing this whole time? And so anyway, so then he was like, so look, I know, literally. I feel like I've made up for lost time, though. And he was like, hey, there's going to be this new show that's coming to America for the first time. It's Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote a sequel to Phantom called Love Never Dies. They did it in London. They like took it off and they rewrote it. And then they did a production in Australia and it was hugely successful. And so that's what's coming to America for the first time. You should sing for it. And I was like, okay. And so I sang for my first casting agent, which they don't do that in opera either, although maybe they are now a little bit. But so I did that. And then my audition experience was super bizarre and unique compared to my castmates because they were trying to find, I mean, this was a premiere of Andrew's baby. And so my castmates went through like literally 9 to 11 auditions. It was super rigorous, super competitive. It was great because they were finding the perfect people. And like, indeed they did, because like our cast was just insane. They were so amazing. And so anyway, so I had the one audition and then my next audition was for Andrew Lloyd Webber himself. And so obviously I knew who Andrew was. And so, but I was mostly excited because again, coming from the opera world, yes, of course there is new music, but most of the repertoire that I sing is like Mozart, and Verdi, you know, people who have been long past. And so I was honestly most excited just to be like a living genius composer of our time. I hope I can ask some questions. Like, I'm so excited. So, and also another difference in the opera world, usually you have your book of arias, right? You have like your different languages. You have French, German, Italian, English. You've been working on these things for years. For Love Never Dies, they literally gave me a packet and they're like, hey, can you learn that tomorrow? And I was like, oh. It's like, I mean, sure, it's not going to be perfect, but okay. So again, just got to dive in. So I came in with my packet and I was like, well, they know I'm going to be looking at the music, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I went in and I had my packet and Andrew like immediately like jumped up from the table. And then we ended up having what was more like a coaching for like 45 minutes than anything else. And we just like went through everything. And I was like, this is so awesome and fun and great. And yeah, and then he was like, do you have anything from the other one, meaning Phantom? And I was like, oh, Maestro, so sorry. I do not right now, but one day, sure. And anyway, so then literally 3 hours later, I was cast as Christine in Love Never Dies. Quickest turnaround from an audition in my life. And like I said, you know, when things are meant to be, they go. Like the universe moves. As long as you're working hard, you're a good person, you're nice, and you're doing, you know, like you are providing the material that like they trust you to, like it moves. So anyway, so then like 6 months into Love Never Dies, Kristen Blodzik, also one of my fairy godmothers, music director of Love Never Dies, and Hal, they're like, hey, listen, we've been talking to Andrew, and all of us think it's a great idea. What would you think about, there's a new revival, brand new, of a world tour of Phantom of the Opera that's opening in 2019. And what do you think about being Christine? And I was like, I mean, that would be great. I was like, this is amazing. And then they were like, and then you transfer to Broadway. And I was like, I'm in. So, yeah. So honestly, for like 2 years almost, I had to be like, with everything, which is like I was dying to announce everything. So anyway, so Love Never Dies closed the first week of December in 2018. And then 3 weeks later, on New Year's Eve, I celebrated New Year's on the plane on my way to Manila to build Phantom from the ground up. And then, which was also an incredible, I mean, how many people get to do that, right? It was with the New York creative team, you know, and like, seriously, how many people get to build Phantom from the ground up? And so we did. We opened in Manila, and then we went to Singapore. We premiered it for the first time ever in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. Also, I can't even tell you what it's like to premiere Phantom, by the way. And then my last stop on the tour, well, for now, who knows, you know, it was Tel Aviv, and we also premiered it there. And then 2 weeks later, after I got back to New York, I was in rehearsal for Broadway, and I made my Broadway debut October 16th until COVID, and now I'm just waiting to go back to Phantom.
Oh my gosh. That sounds like the biggest whirlwind I think I've ever heard anyone say.
Yeah, I mean, it literally was like, boom. So, like, and
Yeah.
again, the universe, like, when it's like, it is your time to blossom, the crazy, well, maybe not so crazy thing is every time I had a break on Love Never Dies, I had another gig. So, like, I wouldn't go on vacation. I would literally, like, I made my debut at the Gran Teatro del Liceo in Barcelona. I did a, San Francisco Symphony. And, like, I was constantly, like, doing something with Bernstein or Candide and Love Never Dies and then straight into I mean, like, it was literally just Brazil. I mean, everything. Like, it just went like this. So for the last 3 years, literally it was like, boom, 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 and then COVID, of course, and it was like, and stay.
So I bet like COVID for you has been like, I bet you don't know what to do with yourself because, like you say, for the past 3 years, you've literally had like no break, not even time to think about anything. It's just the next thing and the next thing all the time. The next cool, crazy opportunity. Like, how has this time been for you then, apart from like wanting to pull your hair out?
Well, I mean, actually, you're totally right. Like a lot of things. I mean, to be honest with you, even coming back to New York and being in one place was a strange sensation for me because I mean I had basically been like a gypsy for like 3 years, like living in a hotel, like being like, wait, you mean I have to wash my own laundry, like, and make my own bed? This sucks. Like, but also like at the same time, like I mean, there's pros and cons, obviously. Like, you're in New York, you're on Broadway, it's amazing, you're with your people, you're with your things. But like it was just crazy because I had lived like this lifestyle of just being on the go. And you're right. It's like, I mean, it's a dream. One thing after the other, no rest, just go, go, go. So to be honest, like for me, it was actually extremely difficult and devastating when I suddenly kind of came to a halt, a forced halt and an extended halt. I mean, to be very honest, I realized, I mean, there are some wonderful silver linings about COVID, although most of it's like, but like there are, I mean, having a moment where you rest, suddenly you do have the time to like kind of go inside and be like, who am I right now? Like, what are my, and you get to be really friendly and honest with like the good things and the bad things. Well, instead of good and bad, let's just say like the shiny and the dark and the, things that maybe there are things you need to like dust off and work on. I mean, that's been really like eye-opening and difficult and heartbreaking and insightful. And indeed, like one thing that I really realized about, and like, let's face it, I mean, Broadway shutdown has been going on for 6 months. We will be back. But like, I realized that the way that I operate is I'm so passionate and an all or nothing person that my identity had become completely woven into a performer. There was no separation. And even right now, like I am having like an identity crisis kind of, which was like extremely jarring and depressing and sad and amazing because I realized you can still be fully consumed, but just have like a teeny bit of separation, right? Like your sense of self and ego do not have to be this. So I think that this break has been really teaching me that, which actually is exciting because as difficult and painful as it can be right now, when I go back to Phantom and all of us go back to Broadway and London and everywhere, there's going to be like this extra layer of self-awareness, I think, and also appreciation because let's face it, like, of course I was grateful I was on Broadway. Of course.
Yeah.
But like, it's been taken away from us, like ripped away from us. And so also historically, I imagine every day, like that first rehearsal back, I mean, for the first time in Phantom's history, everyone's going to be on the same page, fresh. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's basically going to be like a reopening night. That has never happened in its history.
No.
We're going to all come back with this like need and want and like healing balm to like be with each other. And like, we're the COVID cast of 2020, like all of us are. And so like that epic first night when we open, whenever that's going to be, I am not going to be okay. Like, I already know I'm going to be like, whoa, like, because like all these things we've taken for granted, even if we appreciate them, are gone. And so there is going to, I think, be this newfound respect, even more so than before, and love and appreciation. I mean, it's a gift, you know, and like, yes, you know it, but like now we really know it. So like, let me tell you, Jen, it's going to be magical. Like whenever it is, because we will return, we will, but like whenever
Absolutely.
that is, oh my gosh, it is going to be epic. Like,
Yeah. Do you know what? I think
anyway.
sometimes, like, nobody wanted this break and nobody will want it again. Like, oh my God, definitely not. But I think, I think sometimes having that time to reassess and really look at, like you say, you never were ungrateful. You never were for 1 minute taking anything for granted. But sometimes when you, like you say, it's totally out of your control. You didn't want to leave. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a want, it was a necessity. And it was something that right across the board, across the world, happened pretty much overnight. I think it made people stop in their tracks and go, do you know what? Look at how thankful, like I didn't realize how grateful I was. And actually, I didn't realize how cool what I do is and how widely loved it is. I think theatre sometimes can be so underrepresented and underappreciated. You know, people quite a lot of the time don't think that it's necessary and don't think of it as like a key part of life unless they say, oh, well, of course you do, Jen, because you have your own theatre company. Of course you do, because you go touring and singing, and of course you do. But I don't have that profession, so therefore I don't. And I think people in this time have realised, oh my goodness, not only how many people around the world actually do this as a living, whether they're stage management, whether they're whatever it may be, but also how much we need it. It is so needed by so many, like everybody. There's not one person that you've spoken to during this time that goes, do you know what I really miss? I really miss turning on the radio and hearing a new song. Like nobody's released any new music. I really miss like going to the museum and looking at a new, art installation. Whatever it might be, like people are going, do you know what? Actually, I know you ramble on all the time, Jen, about how important the creative arts industry is, because I do, and I'm terrible for it because it breaks my heart when these children have things that are, the cuts and the education for it and everything is being swept under the carpet because it's deemed not important and not necessary. The reality is it actually saves people's lives. That is the reality.
Completely.
And also just for that split second, not only are we engrossed in it as performers, but also people that are watching it. This is transporting people to a totally different place that people need this. And I think that is what, for me, COVID has taught me. This period of lockdown and quarantine and all this, and the fact that it is still going on and will for a number of months, weeks, whatever it is, but it's really taught me that. And yes, to get back into the rehearsal room, that first time that you're there with your people and the first time that they give you your call, or whatever it is, the first time, like for me, the first time that I'll see my next show being performed by the people that I work with is going to be incredible. And the more you talk to people about it, the more it gives you goosebumps, and you're like, it is going to happen. We can't let it die. It just can't happen.
Oh no, but the thing is, you're right. It's a necessary part of what it means to be human. And because our species is going through this together, it doesn't matter what religion, what ethnicity, what country. I mean, it does not matter. It is affecting everyone. And you're right. Here in America too, it's the arts are essential. Have you watched Netflix? Have you listened to a song? Are you looking at Instagram with certain, this is art. And I agree, it's going to be, because also this is a traumatic experience psychologically, physically, everything for everyone around the world, right? This is unprecedented. This hasn't occurred since Spanish flu, maybe 1918-ish. So we're going to need to heal as a species. And what are people going to turn to? You're right. Theater, live performance, connecting with humans, even if we have to wear masks or whatever it is, have a human experience. We are going to need to break down, cathartically feel things, escape from reality for a moment. it's so funny. One of my really good friends, she and I were in Allstate Theater back in high school together, and she ended up becoming a doctor. And I remember she was in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia, and she was telling me these incredible stories. And I remember at the time being like, "Oh my gosh, like she's like literally saving lives. Like what am I doing? Like I'm singing." And then I was like, "No, no, no, no. This is just as important in a very different way. It is literally the
Yes.
balm of the human soul. And like, it is so essential." And, I don't know, I can't speak for London, but I don't think people realize in America, the arts and all the indirect businesses that support the arts bring in $8.7 billion. That's only second to retail in America. That's it. So which means how essential are the arts? Really think about that. They're incredibly so like it's very frustrating when like you don't feel supported as an artist during this time, and you're kind of just like, but you're going to turn to all of us, like, and we are happy to, but we just need to survive this so that we can do what we were meant to do in life. Like, it's the human condition. Like, that's what we're meant to do, is to share it openly with everyone. So yeah, it is utterly essential and so important, and will be so important for us moving forward as COVID, eventually ends. So.
Yeah. And also to tell the stories of the people that, we're storytellers at the end of the day. That's what we want to do. And this time has created so many stories. Think of all the things, that are going to come out of this. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, like we're storytellers, and think of the history and musicals and shows and things. A lot of them, obviously not all of them, but a lot of them are based on historic events. This in time will become something that now also it's relatable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you're right. I mean, like, all of us, some of us have been spared, but like, I mean, like, I've lost people to COVID, like many of us have, like, also different, the psychological pressure of like, what is it like to like lose your job forever and not have anywhere to go? Or like, I mean, we're all going through something that there's actually going to be even another level of depth, I think, coming back to performing, that we will be able to use and live into and appreciate. Again, the human condition. It's all about the human condition, and now we all are really going through something. So yeah. Okay, I'm ready. Quick fire round.
Okay, sweet or savory?
Savory.
Halloween or Christmas?
Christmas.
A farm or a zoo?
Zoo.
Movie or book?
Movie.
A pamper session or an adventure?
Can they be intertwined? Because I'm really obsessed with both. I feel like we could make something out of both.
Oh,
The
I think you
adventure can
froze there.
include. Oh no, can you hear me? Oh yeah. Both.
Yeah,
I'm not picking.
Formal wear or casual? Dog or cat? Party or night in?
Why is that a hard one? I don't know. Well, at this point, I would love a party. I've been in for a long time. So let's say party now. I'm ready.
A rose or a lily?
A lily.
A notepad or a laptop?
Laptop.
Perfect. That was good.
Oh,
I hope so.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying yes, and thank you so much for redoing.
You know what? It is what it is. I'm glad that this hopefully is working. So we'll. I'm like staring at the recording button, like please. So, but thank you so much for having me. But yeah, perfect. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, my lovely.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
How cool was that? We flew all the way to New York City without even having to leave our homes. Amazing! Thank you so much to Meghan for a fantastic interview. Stay safe, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you again soon with another fantastic guest.